Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Betty, and I have Harish here with me, and we are kicking off our Accessibility Awareness podcast.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us here. Welcome on our first podcast session.
So, Harish, why don't you introduce yourself and say why we're here?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks. My name is Harish Biram. I've been born and brought up in India, and I moved to the United States in 2002. From childhood, I was having a rare dystrophy called as macular dystrophy, which is related to macular degeneration-like disease that takes away the central vision. And a lot of doctors were not able to figure it out. But once we were able to figure out it is losing the central vision, you do have the peripheral vision. And I had been told by my doctors that you have to adjust your life with it. There's no cure. So I've been in the software industry for 2 decades and adjusting my life towards how I can run day-to-day errands and do carry on my work at the same time being a person with disability, but at the same time highly functional,
Right.
Without having to depend on disability insurance. And here my story I would love to share with the world so that there's so much opportunities for people with disabilities, and we want to go from there.
How old were you when you lost your vision?
It's right from the fourth grade onwards. I was getting bad grades, so my parents like, "Why are you were a good performing child?" And I didn't even know that uh, the world has so much clear boundaries. It was all blurry for me. So I told my parents that I can't see the board, and they immediately took me to the ophthalmologist. And then they said, "Oh, your son is with this thick of a glasses." And once I got that, that was such a big relief to see borders and edges, and world was a different place.
Brought you clarity.
Yes.
Well, that's amazing.
At the age of 4. So, Betty, I know you've been an advocate and an ally for disabled people, people with disabilities. So, when was your first introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Harish. I started as moving into software development role. My first role was actually to make the City of Tampa website accessible. I knew nothing about it. At that time, I think it was 2002, we did have some very crude accessibility certifications. We'll talk about that in future podcasts, why we don't have it. I wish we did again, but there's some reasons why we don't. But I had to make it accessible. So I had to learn about all of the different accessibilities, all the different disabilities of things.
So it was a training program that you went through, and your employer helped you get that training?
Eventually, yes. The first one was just a book, and you have to just read a ton of government documentation on WCAG 1, right?
Yes.
And then future, it just kind of has been a theme in my career where I've just been given opportunities to help make things accessible, and it just has given me such an awareness of how cool it is to be able to build something and then make it accessible to people who couldn't use it before.
Yes.
You know, it's equivalent to being at a conference and they actually have captions running so that people maybe can't understand my accent, or they have low hearing, they can
still read,
consume, and be part of the conversation,
right?
Which is really cool. And then hearing loss, I grew up with a mother with hearing loss in the family, so we had captions on a lot. And then my daughter, similar to what your mother experienced, it was all of a sudden she wasn't doing well, and her teacher said, "I don't think she can hear me."
Right.
And so going through that and being an advocate for my child with hearing loss and what life is like on that. And then using technology to help accommodate that, and understanding that we can help people with devices like my devices right here.
Yes, assistive technology, we call it, right? And absolutely true. So in that terms, even though you were not directly affected by disability, but you have been indirectly affected either with your mom or your family member, and that's the number, right? Let's talk about the numbers. What are the numbers saying from CDC.gov? They are saying around 61 million American adults, almost like 24%, have some level of disabilities, right? It could be hearing, vision, auditory, cognitive, motor, different types of disabilities. And if 1 in 4, which is almost 25%, it's a big
That's a huge number.
group,
That means
right?
everybody knows somebody
Right. And absolutely.
and everybody's affected in some way.
Right. So what do you think about the technology these days that is coming up? Which have you had an experience with some technology that is completely made somebody who cannot even use it right now?
Yeah, and that's why I'm passionate about being an advocate and an ally
Yes,
for all the accessibility. So much we do with our iPhones
right.
too. And as I've gotten older, I've
Yeah.
needed glasses,
Mhm.
and even my glasses are not strong enough at times. And
Yeah.
I get my phone out and I'll use that as a magnifying.
Right.
And it's amazing how many people don't know that their phones can do that.
Magnifier, exactly.
Right.
I've been doing that because I need to read everything with a screen magnifier or a bigger font. I have a big 42-inch monitor at my desk, and all my texts are very big, right? But here is the greatness of the technology. Mac operating system, iPhone or Android, or even Windows operating system, they are all built in with accessibility technology, which is one of the reasons why I'm able to continue my life with being an individual contributor and independent person and being able to provide with my family. And this is amazing how technology can help people like me who are at a disadvantaged stage. But how can we take it to the next level? What do you feel about that?
I think awareness,
Yeah.
right? And knowing that. And part of accessibility is also making it affordable.
Yes.
Like accessibility means that I can park here without paying $30.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty
Right,
costly.
right.
So
Exactly.
so accessibility can mean so many different things.
Yeah.
And awareness too.
Yeah, right.
So that people know that they're available.
Mhm.
The other thing that I learned is hooking into the APIs, the ARIA APIs,
Mhm.
so that I'm exposing my code, my software, my game, my product, whatever I'm building at the time, it
Mhm.
hooks into other people's accessibility and usability devices.
Yes, yes, absolutely. For our audience, they might not be aware about ARIA, and we will be covering that when we are going to do another podcast about developing or software engineering with accessibility in mind, where we will go a little bit more about ARIA, what Betty just mentioned. So please don't worry if you didn't understand the technology aspect
Yeah.
of it. But yes, in that particular terms, right? I would like to give an example where one of the places where you both work, the
Yeah.
blooming brands, uh, people with disabilities are very much in a closed shell. They don't want to bother others that they have a disability, and they don't want to be a burden in terms of either if it costs an equipment from the employer, it costs something that will help them with their regular job or even at the home, right? So this is a common trend I see with people with disabilities. They do not want to bother anybody.
And you don't know. So
Yes.
a lot of times you don't know if somebody has low vision or if somebody can't hear. When you
Mm.
call their name and they look on this direction because this side
Easy
is
enough.
is deaf.
That's right,
So
exactly.
there's so many cues. Or if you go up to somebody with low vision and put your hand out to shake it,
They-
they don't maybe see it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that brings to one of the instances that happened. So when I was at this employer, and uh, they were giving the handouts, and I cannot read a handout until I have an assistive technology with either a magnifier, a big one, or something called eBot. So I was a little bit hesitant, but I said, okay, because I have to be productive, I need to be able to tell my employer about this. So it was difficult for me to break out of the shell and share it, but I did went to my manager and said, hey, I would love to be able to read those documents and but here is what it will help. An e-bot that can help me magnify and I connect to my uh, monitor. It
Mhm.
will help me read the documents much better. And he said, just put it in the request and I will approve it. And my manager approved it. It went to our C-level executive. It went approved within
Yeah.
matter of minutes to hours. It was done. That's easy. So, folks, if you're working at your place and you are a little bit hesitant of asking for assistive technology, please do not hesitate. There's so much support out there. There's employers who are so much willing to go extra and make sure that you have the technology that you need.
That's true. And having been in a manager role for the last, I don't know how many years,
Mm.
when I'm aware of it, then I can provide those, but it's that old thing, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yes.
And I'm not aware of things
Right.
either. I can tell you it's a lot harder to get some software for my developers than it is to get
Hardware device.
a hardware
Yes.
device.
Yes, absolutely.
Or even better hearing devices. And being in the digital world, we have the pleasure of actually being in the same room.
Right.
But most of our teams now are all over the world.
Right.
And
Distributed.
that creates such a unique challenge.
Right.
Visually, like you're saying, screen sharing, making sure that you're having your screen large enough that others can see.
Yes.
Having enough contrast.
Right.
Sometimes you have to change the contrast if you're going to go screen sharing.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Those
And
type of
closed
things,
captioning for some people.
hugely.
Yes. Yeah.
And closed caption has come such a long way.
And it's almost instantaneous. You're speaking and it's already typing it.
And I learned from having meetings with closed caption on, it gives me the perspective of the consumer of my meeting. And then I realize I speak too fast.
Right.
I slur my words together.
Nice.
And it teaches me to be a better communicator, to be a better leader for the team.
Right.
And it just makes a more inclusive environment. But
Yes.
I have learned better presentation. You see me slowing down while I'm thinking about it because I get super excited and want to blaze through stuff. We only have 5 minutes. Let's go.
Right.
But we can consume things so much better
Right.
when we can really take the time to understand it. And what I learned in my accessibility training, that word,
Yeah.
consume.
Consume. Mhm.
That is such a powerful word.
Yes, absolutely. And here is one of the examples. Let's go to the real physical world example, right? Having an accessibility ramp. Is it just going to help people on the wheelchair or does it help anybody else?
It helps deliveries.
Yes.
So you're going to get your products faster to your building. It helps people with strollers,
Right.
right? It helps the elderly.
Yes.
It helps anybody who maybe had knee surgery or foot surgery and
Yes.
using those scooters and other devices, or people even with a cane.
Yes. And think about an emergency. Let's say a building with 4 floors
Yeah.
and a person has a heart attack and now having a ramp and there is no elevator. How helpful it is to have a ramp. Quickly taking the ambulance and a stretcher.
Yeah.
It helps everybody. So accessibility makes life easier for everybody, folks. It's not just for people with disability. Same is the case with digital accessibility.
Right. And why we talk about physical accessibility,
Right.
because in our technology world, we always proof out the concept. We
Right.
always do it manual. I'm still
Right.
taking notes today.
Sure.
We
Yeah, of
always do
course.
the manual process, we proof it out, and then we automate it. Then we can, and today we can, make with our 3D printers, we can print out assistive devices too.
Absolutely.
And do all kinds of amazing things. We just have to train our brains to be open-minded in
Right.
that sense, to be empathetic.
Right.
And think about, wow, if I can make it so more inclusive, I'm empowering this person whom everybody knows has a disability, but it also empowers those that, might not have any visible disabilities or any documented disabilities, but it empowers the whole team
Mhm.
to be part of it.
Absolutely.
Inclusivity is
That is the
contagious.
key. Yes, inclusivity. And now we just mentioned about stats from CDC.gov, which mentioned 61 million Americans, right? Almost 24%. Now, when we take the whole world, which is around 1.8 billion people who have been affected with some level of disability and impairment. So now we are talking about more than 20% of the world. And then people who are actually indirectly affected are even more, right? So if you're helping a person who is disabled and it's your own family person, then you are still affected, right? So there is, by extending the technology, any physical software, hardware, electronics, electrical, any mechanical devices, whatever is coming into the market, by them not just focusing on the 75%, right? Then now you extend it 25%. We are talking big numbers. So from the business standpoint, if there is business folks who are thinking, how could I improve the revenues of my product or service? Think about people with disabilities, and it's a $10+ trillion hidden market where once you start putting out your product or service, making it accessible, there is a lot of opportunities for growth. So what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, I look at my parents' generation, so I'm sandwiched between my elderly parents and my younger kids who are teenagers and super tech savvy because they
Right.
grew up with devices, especially being in a techie family.
Right.
I see there's so much opportunity in the older generation because they've got some extra money in some cases, and it's a no-brainer for them to pay a little bit extra
Right.
so they can still, be engaged with things
Absolutely.
at various levels. How much do they pay for their hearing aids? You want to talk about
Yes,
billions of
yes.
dollars
Yes,
industry,
absolutely.
hearing aids and glasses.
Right.
And, especially living here in Florida, you can't go 3-4 blocks without hitting a medical device place.
Yes.
And they're all manual, and they want to be engaged. They still love Facebook. They love being part of it.
Right.
And having enough that they can zoom in, teaching them, knowing how to like pinch and
Vincenzo.
zoom in
Right.
things.
Right.
But if you've ever seen anybody with
Yeah, Parkinson's.
yes,
those
they
things.
start shaking, and that's
Right.
when I learned too that I couldn't create my applications to only be used by a mouse
Yes.
because there's so many people that don't use a mouse.
Right.
And then working in other industries where people love to be on their keyboards, well, then making it keyboard accessible, they can get their job done faster because they don't have to go here,
Yes.
here,
Absolutely.
here.
They
It's
just
a
tap.
fluid movement.
Yes. And let's think about websites. How many websites are there out where it is not keyboard only accessible, right?
Mhm.
If you think about the digital landscape, there's so much of 90+% of the web is not made accessible for people with disabilities.
Well, when you say that, what does that mean when it's not accessible?
I mean,
What
let's-
can I see that you can't?
Okay, for example, if we take a website, can we understand all the information that is been the content on the website? Is it completely? It's easy to uh, do a testing like a visually blind person. You just have to close your eyes, go to the browser, and start hitting tab, and switch on the screen reader and hear what the screen reader is saying. When you click on the tab from the browser, from the address bar, it will start going into the logo section, home, account, and other things. And it needs to make a logical sense, like what I'm actually reading. If it's a website where I have to submit a form or everything, it needs to be able to go in a logical order and ask me the information. And if the text box is not, it's saying text box, and I don't know if it is first name, last name, or social security, or date of birth. What does that mean? So this has not been, because of people are not aware about people with disabilities and how to create web application technologies in such a way that everybody can use it. And it has to be tested with real people who have disabilities so that they could certify, yes, this is working. I can understand this information. I can submit my information, and I do. So that's what I've been about.
And then how much opportunity do you think there is out there?
A lot. I could even say 70% plus of websites have serious accessibility issues. And those issues are not very costly. So this is one of the myths that a lot of employers and a lot of companies have, that fixing with ADA compliance, Americans with Disability Act, especially we are in the US right now, we are talking US, but also different countries have different accessibility laws. Based on those accessibility laws, and there are guidelines, Betty just mentioned about WCAG, which is Web Conformance Accessibility Guidelines. Right now, it's 2.1 version and 2.2 is upcoming. However, once websites or web applications, mobile applications are adhering to those guidelines and standards, now you are slowly making it accessible to more and more of your audience.
Well, and I think it's almost been missold because it's a legal compliance.
Yes.
It's not the right thing. We
To-
shouldn't be
yes.
looking at it as, oh, we need to do this so we don't get sued.
Right.
No, we should look at this because one, as a developer and as a product builder, I want my software, my product to be consumable
Yes.
to as many people
Yes.
as possible.
Right, absolutely. And now think about the numbers, right? 20+%. Let's say your product has been saturated in the market and you're unable to figure out how can I get more penetration in the market. And if this avenue has not been looked in your company, this is an amazing avenue. Try making your products and services accessibility friendly, and you will see revenues are going to go up. Of course, it's not going to happen over the night,
Right.
but as you start advertising your product or service as accessibility friendly, and you will start seeing the traction for your product.
Yeah, and I think the US has been a bit behind in it. Europe really kind of came to the forefront
Mhm.
with their standards.
Yes.
And our standards are like what you said, it's from the American Disabilities Act. So that's
1973.
before
And
we had anything, right?
Yes, yeah. However, they have been updated. I do agree,
yes.
you are right. But 1973, when Americans with Disabilities Act came and Section 508 came in, it was a little bit ago, but it was more for physical
Right.
restaurants having the ramp, or public places, libraries, or railway stations, airports, every place, right? Are they accessibility friendly? That came along, that did the work, but it has also been updated for digital accessibility.
Mhm.
Now, these guidelines and standards exist. By just making sure that guidelines are followed, you can be ADA compliant.
But they're still behind. They
Yes.
still don't hardly touch, pun intended,
Right.
or touch devices,
Right,
right?
right.
And then what about, our AR, VR? What about all of this augmented reality, about Oculus and
Yes.
HoloLens? There's so much opportunity.
To go
those.
forward. So yes, that's the fun for the next decade. Let's say if we take what technology came in the last decade, right, or maybe 15 years. So when iPhone first came out in 2007, so we are around 15 years, right? So can these applications that are running on the devices, mobile, Android or iOS, can all of those have adhere to the standards? And can the web technology that has been going on for more than 2 decades now, right? Can we adopt accessibility there? First, because yes, we want to go to the latest technology, but can we also make the current technology, because that will help millions of people right now.
Oh, yeah.
If somebody is blind or having challenges, they are alone at home. They should be able to order any food that they want, like normal person. But the moment the websites don't allow, or web or mobile apps don't allow it, now they have to figure out a way to get help, right?
Mhm.
So you mentioned in the past about Click Here. So
Yes, Click
What-
Here's. Oh, I hated Click Here's. That was the coolest thing. That was my first experience into the NVIDIA screen readers. And I would go through and as you said, I would use the keyboard to tap through, and I would have to close my eyes because
Nice.
it was just too much. I had my headset on and I would tab through and I would see how well I coded it, meaning I put my header tags in place, and you can dive deep on that
Yes,
other
yes.
things later. But everybody was used to seeing click here, because from the visually, that
that doesn't make any sense.
that's
Yeah, you-
75%, 80% of people are visual, and then, oh, click here, it tells me to click here. And my supervisor at the time, he said, and we don't use the term click because not everybody uses a mouse.
Yes.
You know, we got touch screens coming out. We can,
Right.
you know, select. It sounds
Select.
so much more sophisticated anyway.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's still select here. What does that tell you? What is the context? What is it doing? And then
Yes.
once we started putting the actual meanings of what you're selecting,
Yes.
then all of a sudden you got this thing called SEO juice,
Yes.
and your website was more optimized because Google is just, you know, now we call it an AI, but it's
Yes.
an, you know, it was a scraper,
Yeah.
and it would search for all those keywords and things like that. And
Right.
meantime, there was these black hat SEO people that would put white text on a white background to
Yes.
saturate keywords, when all they really needed to do was make it accessible
Yeah.
and make good prose, and it described their content well,
Yes.
and have those links of what was relevant to. And
Absolutely. And in that scenarios, right, when people start really testing their applications, and it could be mobile applications or web applications or websites, anything. When you start using people with disabilities, or even your own testing team can test, like
Oh,
how
yeah.
you have to test with NVIDIA, close your eyes and see is cap, it's just doing tabs working.
tabs and arrow keys.
Right, exactly. And is the information making sense? Can the person easily understand and comprehend the information?
Mhm.
So that's towards this. And what about cognitive?
Oh my goodness, cognitive is a really good one too. And that's hitting more and more
Yes,
as well too, as people have a spectrum of abilities and disabilities.
right.
So cognitive is definitely a concern, and putting content out in a public format, as
Mhm.
I was working for a municipality at the time.
Mhm.
We followed, and I encouraged the content creators to actually keep it at a fourth grade reading level,
Great.
because anything above that, you're not just, you know, maybe dismissing people that don't have as much education. You're actually dismissing people where English is a second or third language.
Yes, absolutely.
And these people are really smart.
Yes.
Right? They just don't have the mastery of our language yet, but you can still communicate, and you can still provide more material,
Yes.
and you kind of lead them into you know, richer content,
Yes.
if this is something that's interested in. But if you can absolutely exclude people by using a very
Complex layouts and richer content. You just mentioned about the richer content that made me think about whenever the websites have some complex layout, it just is not consumable for people with cognitive abilities. They need in a simple layout, bulleted list formats, rather than having 3 or 4 columns and content going from left to right and up and down and left to right and images here and there. So trying to make your layouts more simpler, more bulleted list or easy table.
But what if I'm a designer and I pride myself in these beautiful, complex, and, you know, moving layouts and things? How do we convince them that's really cool,
Yes.
and it has a place? But how can we?
Yes, there is a blend, absolutely. So there is, again, this is a myth that building cool stuff is not going to be, definitely not going to be accessible, or building accessible to websites is not going to be cool. No, there is a middle ground we can
Yes.
all meet. And in one of the demonstrations when I gave about designing for accessibility, I show 2 interfaces. One interface is just pretty cool, and the other interface is just accessibility friendly. But I show a middle ground, which is both good and enough design. At the same time, it's good accessibility. So there is a middle ground, and we will definitely share that information in the future coming.
Well, I am super excited about us diving in more and having more discussions, and we're just now kicking this off.
Yeah.
So what are we looking for to grow on this? What do you think we should be asking for?
Yes. So as we go for, please do consider coming to this podcast more, and we want to share more knowledge, more awareness, and how to design, develop, test, QA test, and also do AI, how we want to increase AI with accessibility, and then automation there's so many areas that we are going to start talking about in this podcast. So feel free to learn, share, and promote this awareness around your circles.
Yeah, and we're definitely looking at doing some more demos and things too. So we'd love to get some input from some of our users and saying, hey, I've heard about this. How can I,
Be part
Yeah.
of it.
yes. How can I turn maybe we do a quick video to show you how to turn on your accessibility reader modes for MacBooks and a
Yes.
Chromebook and Windows.
And Zoom, and how to magnify, and how to, we could be definitely happy to help you with that. And
Absolutely.
we would love to be of assistance, and please do contact us, and we will provide all that information in the link below in this video. So
Yeah, and so coming up, our next podcast, we're actually going to go deeper and talk about some of the laws. We're going to go into the WCAG standards.
right.
We're going to learn why it's called the WCAG, which is
What-
interesting.
What Betty is saying is WCAG. It's in the accessibility field, especially digital accessibility field. It's called WCAG. So WCAG 2.1. You just have to go and type in Google WCAG 2.1. You will see a vast amount of information that is about how to make digital accessibility at the center for the digital transformation.
I think when I first created, you had that Hello World software
Right.
as a young software developer, and you
Right.
had your program built, and it was like, oh yes, it built. And then when you realize this whole world of accessibility and things, and then all of a sudden you're building something that's accessible and consumable by people who you don't even know, you don't
Right.
even hear about
Yes.
necessarily.
Yes.
That's like a whole new, code buzz. You're like, oh
Absolutely.
my gosh, like, now this is gonna be usable and consumable to so many more people.
Right.
So it really helps refine our craft as software developers
Yes.
to a whole nother level.
Yes.
And it really, I'm excited because it helps build our legacy as professionals.
Yes.
That what is our legacy as software developers and professionals? Because we were kind of on the precipice of, our teachers grew up and were telling us about punch cards and
Yes, yes, at that point.
and even I didn't go immediately into software development. I went into networking first because I had to pay $400 for a Borland compiler.
Yeah.
And so you talk about it wasn't accessible to me.
Right.
Now we can download free coding tools online.
Yes.
There's
Absolutely.
now we have this thing called the browser that we can,
Anywhere, anytime.
Yes,
Learn
exactly.
anywhere, anytime, whatever you want. Google is your friend, YouTube is your friend, and there's so much out there to learn. And as Betty was just mentioning about so many people being able to use your product and service, and think about in that particular population, somebody has been able to benefit from your application to take it to the next level. So if Microsoft or Apple did not provide accessibility tools, I wouldn't have my career at all. I would have to be collecting disability insurance, and I would love to be a productive member of a society. I would love to be a contributor for the positive change, and I would love to be a provider for my family. So
I can tell you are. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, right? And that is only made and thanks to Apple and thanks to Microsoft for providing the technology, because of which now we can take it to the next level.
Right.
How can software engineers, architects, IT people start thinking about digital accessibility? And also, you don't have to be in the IT field, right?
Right.
Any hardware or anything that your company is producing, start thinking about people with disabilities. What do you say?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just the right thing to do.
Yes.
Because at some point, if we're lucky enough to get older in age and not die before, our bodies are going to start giving out. You're going to need more accessibility tools. I'm going to need more accessibility tools. So we're almost self-serving ourselves too, to help us be independent longer,
Yes.
to not be a burden on our children and family.
Right.
And that's really this amazing, the right thing to do regarding helping people be independent.
Yes.
And like you said, be able to actually sustain themselves. And when you give someone a job, you give them a whole lifestyle.
Yes, and with this job that I do, I've now consumed more. So I have a special driving privileges. For 3 years, my driving privileges were removed because of my eye issues. But when I went to a specialist doctor with low vision, he gave me what is called bioptic driving. In look up some of these states will allow bioptic driving, and Florida allows that. And with that, of course, it was $3,500 for the glasses, but it gave me driving privileges back, right? And now I am driving Tesla, which is making me equally competent like anybody because of full self-driving capability. And now my life is as equal to a normal person. And I am thanking Tesla as well for bringing technology in such a way that it is at the right place for me. And how can we now take to the next level? Can we have autonomous wheelchairs that
Right.
would be as advanced in technology?
Yeah, because a lot of people don't just have one disability, it's a blending of
Yes.
disabilities.
Yes.
But you also get extra abilities with that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, my memory skills have been so my wife is always surprised, like, hey, tell me the credit card number. She doesn't remember, and I tell the credit card number,
What's her
expiration
credit
date.
card number?
Yeah. So yeah, my memory, and it was intentional, and I already had good memory, but I developed even more sharper. If I want to remember anything, I can just keep it in my memory for a long time.
Right.
And it was it's people think it's a gift. Yes, it was a little bit of a gift, but I had to also work on it to have my memory sharp,
Yes.
right?
And it does, it kind of gives you superpowers because you can hyper focus on other things.
Right, absolutely. Even in Tesla, I'm not able to read all of the things, but I know the icon and the button, I'm going and pressing
Right.
it. I'm doing that, and it's still helping me to be productive enough to know all the basics, to know all where exactly I need to do. And that's where I feel that a lot of people are going to benefit with the technology, and especially the technologist being open-minded and going towards, hey, let's make this available for everybody.
When we used to do that, we'd build a website and show our mother or grandmother, and they'd give us all kinds of opinions,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
how is that any different nowadays?
Nowadays, yes, yeah, because
honest feedback.
because nowadays your 2-year-old is going to give you the feedback.
Yes,
Because
they
the
do.
2-year-old is going to touch some things on your phones or iPad, and if it's not working, that app is gone. Next app.
Yes, they
Right.
can delete apps too. So
Right.
yes. Well, this was amazing. I am
Yes.
so excited about
Yeah.
our next series. And I think that's a wrap for episode 1.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
it was great. Thank you, Betty, for your time. Thank you all for joining.